Right now, you can go through heartbreak completely alone. Cry into a pillow at 2 a.m., mute a name, scroll past a face you used to know better than your own, and nobody has to know any of it happened. For almost all of human history, that kind of silent, private breaking simply wasn't possible. You were never actually alone when it happened. Grief isn't a modern invention. It's one of the oldest, most consistent things a human being can feel. So how did people survive it? Before therapy, before self-help books, before anyone told them it would get better with time? You probably think grief is something your mind does to you. Something broken. Actually, it's something your ancestors built on purpose, thousands of generations before you were born. Here's the part most documentaries skip. Evolutionary researchers argue grief itself was shaped by natural selection. It's the price tag on attachment, the cost of forming deep bonds in hunter-gatherer bands throughout the Paleolithic. Wait, read that again. Your pain isn't a malfunction. It's the tax on the exact bonding that once kept your whole species alive. The same wiring that made your ancestors share food, cooperate, and protect each other is the wiring that tears you open when a bond breaks. And your brain doesn't file "he died" and "he left" in separate folders. Both register the same way. The loss of someone your survival used to depend on. That's why a breakup can feel like a death. To the oldest part of your nervous system, it basically is one. This is where the proof gets strange. In 1942, in a cave on the Ligurian coast of Italy, archaeologists found the skeleton of a teenage boy, Gravettian, roughly 15 to 18 years old, buried close to 28,000 years ago. They nicknamed him Il Principe, the prince, because of what was buried with him. But here's the part that changes the story completely. A recent forensic reanalysis of his bones found trauma consistent with a fatal mauling by a large carnivore, most likely a bear. This teenager didn't die peacefully. He died violently. And his community still buried him with hundreds of perforated shells and deer canines arranged into a cap around his head, mammoth ivory pendants, and carved antler batons, laid into a bed of red ochre. Think about that. A group of Ice Age humans, thousands of years before writing existed, looked at a violently killed teenager and decided, we are not walking away from this quickly. That's not survival of the fittest indifference. That's a group grieving out loud, in stone and ochre, built to last 28,000 years. But burying someone with care is one thing. Processing the pain afterward is a different question. And the answer is stranger than a single grave. Go back further. In a cave in northern Iraq, researchers found the remains of a Neanderthal man who'd been blind in one eye, deaf, missing part of one arm, and crippled. Injuries he couldn't have survived without years of other people feeding him, protecting him, and dragging him along on the move. He didn't die from those wounds. He died old. Someone carried the cost of keeping him alive for years, long after he stopped being useful by any harsh survival logic. That's not efficiency. That's a group deciding a person was worth the wait. Grief worked the same way. It wasn't processed in silence, it was processed out loud, together. Repeatedly, through shared memory, ritual movement, and physical presence. Not internal rumination. Anthropological research on mourning points to a clear function here. When a whole community gathers around the person who's hurting most, the emotional weight gets spread across the group instead of sitting on one set of shoulders. In many traditional mourning practices, the body was expected to grieve too. Through dance, through movement, not just the mind, quietly, alone in a room. Now here's the twist almost nobody says out loud. You didn't lose that system because you're weaker than your ancestors. You lost it because the structure disappeared. Modern people mostly get a few days of wearing black, some flowers, a post, and then the quiet expectation to carry on. An Ice Age human who lost someone had an entire group stop moving, physically stay present, and mark the loss for days. You get 3 days of bereavement leave and a group chat that goes quiet within a week. Same logic applies to heartbreak that has nothing to do with death. There was no version of getting over it, alone in a room. Loss of any kind used to be something a group helped carry. Now it's something you're expected to manage privately and efficiently, on your own schedule, often while still showing up to work the next morning. They had no concept of moving on by yourself. The idea would have sounded insane to them. Grief was something the whole group carried until you could stand under it again. You've probably gone through your worst heartbreak completely alone, muting a phone, staring at a ceiling, telling yourself to be strong and get over it by Monday. They would have had people sitting beside them the entire time, and nobody would have expected them to be fine by any particular date. We didn't get better at heartbreak. We just got better at hiding it. They never learned to hide it because nobody ever made them go through it by themselves.